Hello, Steve White, Steve Arts 89. Well, I am continuing on with my David Lynch marathon. I started this a week ago, and I've just had a hard time getting into the right headspace to watch these films and then actually process them and do my little review videos. So I'm up to Lost Highway, and I must admit I came into this with a little bit of a bias, I guess, because I have a little bit of a love-hate relationship with David Lynch because I felt really betrayed by what he did with The Revenge, and I think that kind of affected how I saw the films retroactively, and I was sort of a bit dismissive of them of his later films having any actual depth, and I was sort of siding with Quentin Tarantino, who I've never liked, who basically said that David Lynch had disappeared up his own arse. And I was going to start this review by saying that this is a film where you can actually see him disappearing up his own arse. But then I actually watched some interviews and started to realise, okay, there is actually something to this film. It's not just weird for the sake of weird, or just abstract and surreal for the sake of superficial pretentiousness or something like that. Now, one of the interesting things David Lynch said in an interview, which I managed to find, was at the time he was a bit obsessed with the O.J. Simpson trial, and he was fascinated by how someone who could kill two people could then just go on, living like normal and go golfing and stuff like that, and he discovered this a psychological condition called psychogenic fugue, and that is where someone basically creates a new reality or a new personality or something so that they can live with themselves and live with what they've done, or keep what they've done for themselves. And that does seem to ring true for this film. When I first sort of watched it, I wasn't sure what it was doing. Was this supposed to be supernatural? Were we supposed to take this literally? And then once I sort of got that it was the idea that we have a unreliable protagonist and their point of view, we're seeing it through his eyes, and it's not reality, it's not what happened, it's how he chooses to remember it, as he says in the film. Then it sort of did make sense. And then I saw an interview with Patricia Arquette, and she originally thought she was playing two women, and she was saying to David how, I'm going to do this with my teeth. I'm guessing and then he was saying, no, you're playing. It's the same woman. Don't try and make a difference to distinguish the two. It's just the same woman. And then she got, and that's how she played it. So I'm fairly sure that this is what this film is. There's a couple elements I still don't get, but there is something to it. It's not just surreal for the sake of pretentious adulation. I don't know. Because I felt that David Lynch, in his earlier films, was viewing the world, was seeing the world through his eyes. And then I felt like we were just sort of seeing David Lynch's world for the sake of David Lynch showing off his world. Something about it just felt kind of pretentious. But so we have the story of this man, Fred, who is a jazz musician. He's a bit paranoid, a bit jealous of his wife. She does seem kind of cold with him and on edge. The first opening scenes are very tense, and to have someone come to the door and press the buzzer and say Dick Laurent is dead, and he tries to see who it is and he can't see anyone. Now this actually happened to David Lynch. He had someone buzz him and he said, David? He said, yes. And he said, Dick Laurent is dead. And then he went away, and he looked, he couldn't see anyone. He didn't have a window, he looked directly out in his house. And it's funny, he noted that he didn't want to film in his house, and they couldn't find another house with that sort of issue, so they had to buy a house and renovate it so they could film in that house for the film. So, and he had a neighbour called David, and he guesses the message was supposed to be for the neighbour because he didn't know a Dick Laurent and didn't know what that message meant. But you see how these sort of things now happen in his mind, and how he came up with this story. We see this guy, and they start getting videotapes delivered to the house of someone videoing the house from the outside, which is terrifying. And then they're videoing it from the inside, which is terrifying. And there is this sort of quiet dread that we sort of see creeping through the atmosphere of the first part of the film is amazing. Then the scenes where they go to a party and they go back and supposedly someone's gotten in the house, and we see flashes of what looks like a murder, and then he's arrested, because before this they go to the police and they don't really find anything and that, and then they go to the party and they just keep living, and they have this mystery man that he meets at the party, says he's at the house, and it's played by was it Peter? No, Robert Blake. And it's just chilling and disturbing, and then he's arrested, he's in the cell, he's been convicted as a murderer, everyone knows he's a murderer, he did it and everything, and you're wondering, is this going to be a kind of North by Northwest story or something? Is this going to be about him proving he didn't do it, like where do we go from here? And then he has this seizure slash explosion slash event where he disappears and is replaced by a young man called Pete, who is eventually released because obviously he's not him. And he goes about his life, he's a mechanic, and he meets the same woman, played by Patricia Arquette. Different name, different hair colour, but it's the same woman. We get that it's the same woman somehow. And he romances her. She's in a relationship with the man whose car he's fixing. They have an affair. Eventually she asks him, she's done a bunch of things with him, pornography and things, and she wants to escape. He sees himself as sort of rescuing her from this man who's controlling her and owns her and everything. And eventually she convinces him to kill him, and they use another guy she's with, and he eventually gets killed, and eventually they escape together and they're having sex, and he says, I want you, and she says, you'll never have me, and she walks away. And then Pete turns into Frank. So we see Pete lay down on the beach, because this is a sex scene on the beach, in car headlights, and then we see Balthazar Getty, he plays Pete, Bill Pullman get up, and then he goes into this cabin on the beach where the woman has gone, and he meets the what do we call him, the mystery man again, and we see that he actually confronts him with a video camera, because earlier the police ask, do you have a video camera, and she's like, no, he doesn't like them. He's like, I like to remember things how they happen, not have an actual record. I prefer how I remember them, which is an indication that this is like a fantasy and a different life, a different person he's created to get around the reality. He killed his wife. Now, how that comes about, I kind of struggle with, because when he's now himself, where is he? Is he still in this fantasy world, or is he in the real world, and has he killed this Dick Laurent character in his real world, in his real life? Because at the end of the film, he goes to his apartment with the police following him, and he's the one who says Dick Laurent is dead, and then he runs away, and he runs away on the lost highway, and has another sort of fit / event where we're not sure what is happening there. Is he starting the cycle again? Is he changing? Is he going to another dimension? Is this him being killed by the electric chair in real life, and it's destroying his fantasy world? There is some interpretation there, and people have different ideas. I'm not sure really what's happening at the very, very end of the film, but the basic idea that he's created this fantasy and this person, and we're seeing the film through his retelling sort of, and I guess then it doesn't have to acknowledge time or logic, and it could just still be him explaining and justifying, because killing Dick Laurent is like punishing him for what he did to the Patricia Arquette character, and he's justifying killing her by making her have an affair with him, but then he kills him as well. It's just we don't see her be killed, but so it does seem like he's just justifying these things, and that we're always in his head and we never really are in. There is no real world, no reality in this film. So trying to make sense of the ending on sort of like a timeline doesn't really work, but that's okay. Now, like I said, I felt this film was very pretentious at some point, and I didn't really get it, and I felt like at some point David Lynch stopped making films about anything. But this is about several things. Something is happening here. There is a mystery to actually, discover, which I felt like his first few films had. So whether this is something that never happened, as in he's sort of moving to this point of sort of making David Lynch films that aren't really about anything. They're just being a David Lynch film. That's what I felt like he'd slipped into. But I'm now wondering if that ever really happened, or whether it was just my perception and perhaps critics' perceptions as well. Because, yeah. So I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think of this film. I love the tone. I find it interesting. Balthazar Getty's quite cute. Patricia Arquette is amazing. I was shocked by the nudity. I didn't remember any of this. And it's interesting to see in interviews of her that she is incredibly shy, almost phobic about being naked. So doing the film was a challenge for her that she sort of wanted to take on. So she wasn't exploited, because I was watching this and there is the issue of are David Lynch's films misogynistic? And I had a few moments where I'm watching the films and I'm just like, yeah, it's just the way women are depicted in these and treated in these. But with her, there was a difference. She had there was a power in her sexuality that she was this woman, and it's something that he was afraid of. I think that character was afraid of, but something she got to display as a strong thing. And I think for her also it was a pride thing, because she was getting past this phobia and she was, doing this film and being this character. So that was sort of an interesting element. But everyone else is great. I just love the start of the film when you don't know quite what's happening, and when you have, the mystery man and the party and he's at the house, and that part of the film is just amazing. Once we get to the Pete section, it's a bit different. It still sort of works, but it's like you're just in a different film, and you could almost just start watching it from that point. So that was a little disappointing on that level, but still interesting. And then when he switches back, the confusion and all that, and I sort of had to work out what this was. Because I was just seeing it too literally and trying to be linear about it, and seeing it more as fantasy and surrealism than actually seeing some inside somebody's psychosis and their fantasy life or fantasy reality that they've created. So I think that's what it ultimately is. But I'm still talking. I'm kind of doing 15-minute reviews for these videos, so I guess that's just sort of why I'm still going, because I don't feel like I have to need to like get it done in 10 minutes. I'm just looking at my notes and I'm like, did I forget anything? No, I think I covered anything. Everything. Yep. I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think of the film. Do you have a different interpretation? Have you heard of it? More interesting interpretations? Like I said, David Lynch, for me, explained the film. When he said that he was inspired by the psychogenic fugue, I'm like, okay, this is the basis. This is, this is the thing in reality, in the real world, to link this through, to understand it through. And I see a lot of interviews of people just asking for some little way into the film. Not an explanation, because no one wants him to explain his films, because there's no mystery then, but just put us on the right road, even if it is a lost highway and it's still a mystery. At least we know which way we're going, or where maybe what the destination is, or where we've come from, or something. And he's very nasty about this in interviews. He plays games with people and he just doesn't answer questions and just doesn't let people know. And on one level I get that, because he's protecting the mystery in that, but sometimes it feels like he's hiding a lack of actual, substance or actual structure or creativity or something. It just irks me on one level. And I saw him doing this in a lot of interviews, but he was protecting something that was there, not trying to hide a lack of something. And I better stop, or I will end up talking over 15 minutes. But it's hard not to, because with the good David Lynch films, which I'm starting to suspect they may all be, and maybe it was just me, there is enough to examine and look at. There is something there. So I'm curious to see what other people think. Even though I've just watched a bunch of videos about what people think, I'm curious what people think of my take or my feelings. I'm going to go. Bye.